Negroes in this country are confronted by is with a re-education program, not a re-education program for whites, but a re-education program for black people themselves to eliminate the negative image that has been through propaganda instilled within us of ourselves since we've been in this country. It'll take an entirely new approach to restore some kind of racial pride and racial dignity in the minds of the black people. And once we have this pride and this dignity, we can get the cohesiveness and the unity and harmony necessary to solve our own problems here in the black community instead of waiting for representatives of the white community to come uptown and solve these problems for us.
Welcome back to another edition of IWDM Community Conversations at Masjid Muhammad live studios. Today we're on virtual studios. We are at 255 South Orange Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. We ask that you join us and check us out on our Facebook page, Masjid Muhammad Newark, as well as on our YouTube page, Masjid Muhammad Newark. And you can also follow us on our website. For more information, you can check out www.masjidmuhammadnewark.org. That's www.masjidmuhammadnewark.org. We had a special show today. We normally on Friday evenings at 6 at this time, but we wanted to pull it up to Wednesday because Friday, I know a lot of us are going to be out active. Juneteenth is Friday. So we're going to have a lot of activities throughout the city of Newark and throughout the country, obviously. And so we didn't want to, we may go live at the locations that we're going to be at, but we did want to get our interview in this week. We kicked off the series called Masjid Muhammad Newark, or MMN Freedom School, during these podcast series for the summer as a way to inform and educate more keenly in relation to civil liberties, civic duty, civil discourse, and civilization. And so we're honored to have our dear brother today, Imam Shaheed Abdullah, who I'm going to bring on. He's known in our community as a griot, a historian. But today we're going to unpack that. I know on our flyer it just says Bilalian Griot, but it's African Bilalian American Griot. And we're going to ask him, of course, to give us some insight on that language, on that expression. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on our dear brother, Imam Shaheed Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah, I'm glad you're able to be on with us this early evening.
Yes, I'm very glad to be here and with you and your audience to talk somewhat about some of the things that I've been blessed to do and inspired to work on. And as you mentioned, as a griot, usually the term griot is an English term that talks about a person that deals with the history of their culture. And we are coming into our own here in America as the African Bilalian American people. So therefore, our culture would be looked at and studied by a griot. So being African American griot, that's basically what it really talks about. And in doing that, it gives me the opportunity to do a lot of research in dealing with how we came into existence and the impact it has. And this was really inspired, is what inspired me most to do that, was Imam Muhammad, because he mentioned several times the importance of culture. And he said that we are a new people. Just that alone led me to begin to research the whole idea of being a new people. How does this come into existence? What is the potential impact of this?
What does it look like? and what are the odds that the people who are already in existence, the cultures that already exist, how are they going to receive this new culture? And this new culture that Imam Muhammad was referring to were the our descendants who first came from Africa and the different tribes, from Ghana and Nigeria and other tribes, and brought to America in the 1600s, and begin to fraternize here. And under the conditions of being enslaved by the European population, um, our ancestors were able to build something to themselves, which was very difficult, especially under the stress of slavery. But still, they were able to put together and formulate, maybe not in a technical sense, but formulate in a rough and uh, uh, sense of putting a culture together, that their offsprings will be able to look at the culture and build and develop and evolve into a new culture. And that's basically what happened with us as African American people. We've been struggling. I myself, I was born in 1942, which gave me the insight of going through several generations of African Americans who's been exposed to different explanations as to how we came into existence, what is our purpose here, and different ways other people begin to look at what we were doing and what we can do. So it gave me that opportunity. Consider the opportunity, and I consider we all have this opportunity. Whoever's born at a particular time, and if Allah blessed them to breathe the air and live, so they have an opportunity. That's what the physical body gives us. The physical body gives us an opportunity, and that opportunity is something I really was taking advantage of, especially for the last 50 years or so, because I had the opportunity, as many of you, of learning and understanding the teachings of Imam Muhammad, who taught a way of enlightening the mind, of developing our mind to the degree where we then could think for ourselves and use the power of the rational mind, use the power of the conscious mind that Almighty God, Allah, put in us. And all human beings have the same mind. The difference is the physical makeup. The physical makeup comes from the earth that we eat, the sunshine, the part of the world we live in, and the interracial marriages, and communicating with people, different races coming together. That makes up the physical. But the mental is basically the same. As Imam Muhammad put it, he says that man means mind. And if we take that wholeness of that particular statement, man means mind, and then some years before, we have other writers who said things like, all that is a man, all that is man is his mind. Everything else can be found in a animal, like a horse or a pig or anything of that nature. So that really causes us to think. And it caused me to think, and I'm sure it caused others of us who were there at that time to think and begin to digest this thinking. And by digesting this thinking, it led me to research. It led me to research our history, beginning from my present time and going back, and finding all the information I could that would generate the existence, my existence, that generated my existence and made it possible for me to exist in the world today, and things that I can do and explore because of that trail that's left in the in inheriting the the makeup of my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, and on and on and on. And because we inherited that, that gave us that physical. existence. They gave us that biological existence. And the cultural existence generally comes with the fraternization of the people amongst themselves, learning what's values they have, the way they look at the world, the way they look at hierarchies within their own structure. All of these things are basically the cultural development which shapes our identity, which shapes us as individuals. The physical world gives us a physical appearance, gives us a physical appearance that we can, what we look like and what we can do, but is that cultural development that shapes our identity, whether we have a positive identification with our physicality or whether we have a negative identification with that. That if the culture is changed or the culture is fed this kind of information that would cause the individual to be negative about himself and his people, then that is the ground floor or the beginning of the extinction of that particular culture. And we find that this has happened to many cultures before us. And here in North America, they had almost 65 million Native Americans in this area before before this took place.
Yes, sir. So while he comes back, we're here live on Masjid Muhammad Noor Community Conversation with Imam Shaheed Abdullah, our African Bilalian American Griot, who has been sharing with us the importance
the generations before us. And this is not just with the African American people. This progress happens with all cultures. All cultures come in existence the same way. They don't necessarily go through the same social events and the same conditionings, but they do go through the same process. And that same process is, as I was saying, that's where we develop our positive self-image of our individual selves and the positive self-identity. And most of us know that in Imam Muhammad, he had put a lot of energy and information into developing our self-identity as a human being. And that's very important also, because before we can really hold true to any cultural development we have, if we don't see ourselves as a human being equal to all other human beings, then whatever cultural development we come through is going to be negative. It's going to keep us in a negative state of mind, because we're going to think that we're not as good as another people, as another culture. So in Imam Muhammad's journey, he was straightening out our understanding on what is the human being, what is this concept man, what is this idea of man. And once he was able to get us to understand this particular thinking, and that man means mind, and we can then begin to put together the things that are around us that cause us to either be negative toward ourselves or positive toward ourselves. But until we really grasp this concept of man means mind, we really are not free, not mentally free. We are physically free, but we're not mentally free. Because if we don't grasp the concept of man means mind, then those who do understand that concept of man means mind, then they can manipulate us through the different facets that exist in the human life, such as emotions. They can manipulate us through emotions. They can stimulate our mind to be off track in the development of ourselves. This is a scientific, not necessarily investigation, but it's a process. It's a process that's in nature, that Allah has put in nature in order for each civilization and each culture to reproduce itself. Each culture can reproduce itself simply by having a conscious understanding of who they are, what their existence lead them to, and what they can contribute to their lives. And then they have to base all of that based on the language they speak, that holds them together. Based on the things that are important to them, that holds them together. Based on the way they see the universe, the way they see God, the way they see the aspects of themselves as a human being. All of that reshapes the next generation. If that culture has any kind of, we would say, let's say any kind of defect in a natural evolutionary process, then that defect would affect the generations that come after, one generation after another. And they would lose the respect that they should have naturally. They would lose their respect of themselves, because they would lose the respect of the culture. So they can't continue with their culture. And in many cases, what they would do, they would not even want to multiply. They not even want to marry with one another. They would rather marry into another culture, because they consider themselves saving themselves away from something that's very negative. But all of that is in the mind. All of that is in the mind. That is not a physical phenomena. That's a mental phenomena. Because the mind shapes the man. The mind shapes what we think of ourselves. And if we don't grasp that, then whatever is educating us, whatever is teaching us in our everyday lives, is shaping our mind, and it's shaping our identification, and shaping what we think of ourselves, shaping what we think of the world, and shaping what we think about God. It's not just the scripture that frees a man's mind. Not just the Torah, the Bible, or the Quran. In order for the human being, to free their mind from another culture that has been dominating their mind for many years, they have to use their conscious mind. Their conscious mind has to come alive to their existence of themselves, separate from the people who have indoctrinated them into believe in something other than themselves. Now, that sounds like maybe an easy process, or a process that, oh yeah, I understand that, but they don't understand it. Most people who say they understand that don't understand it, because most of them are suffering from a false, what we call a false reality. We're living in a false reality. We're living in an area where people think men walk on water. We are living in a reality where people think that rods turns into snakes, that a man can throw a rod on the ground and it'll turn into snakes. Regardless on what that represents and the idea of it. But we live in a time where the real world that we call reality is a false reality. The reality we living in today doesn't hold up to your mind. If we would use our mind, if we would use the powers of our mind, this reality we live in could not hold up. We could never be deceived by this reality we live in and the people who control this reality. If we use a simple process like the Quran says, guard your mind, and the Quran encourage us to think. And Imam Muhammad has expressed to our community, he says, follow the logic to its logical conclusion. That's the process in which Allah has put in every human being on the planet Earth. Every human being that is come into existence with that power. The power that's in their mind to follow the logic, whatever the situation may be, to its logical conclusion. And the other aspect that's in the creation of the human being, that we may not go into it too much this evening, but because we want to get to the part about why we are here and what do we have to offer. But the other aspect is what we call in the Quran, they call it taqwa. Most most people don't use that term and concept in the proper way, because we get our thinking and way we look at religion from another religious group. We get it from the Christians, we get it from the Jews who came before the Quran was revealed, and they had the masses of people thinking in a particular way, following that false reality. And in teaching them to follow that false reality, we sometimes miss the very simple aspect of something as simple as when Allah says, "Zali kitabu la rayba fihi hudan lil muttaqin." He's saying that this is a book, in it is guidance for those who have taqwa. And if we understood that that is saying that the human being is created with the inclination to do the right thing. The human being was created by Allah with the inclination to do what's right within their culture, within their society, within their family. They're created to do what's right. They grow into that, and the culture then supports that that position of taqwa. The culture in their family that they live in, the people they live around, supports that position of doing what's right. That's so important, because if we don't use our rational mind to use the logic to see the point, how that particular point is so simple, but it's so impacting. And that will help us to move toward what is right. Move toward what is right. Doing what's right. And it's logical. It's logical for us to think that. Why? Because we believe that the Creator is not an evil creator. We believe that the Creator creates things in their right form, and for them to excel in the right form. So if we believe that, then the logic is in us, in each human being, is the inclination to do right. Our logic will bring us to that point. And once we begin to understand how the logic works, then we begin to understand how important culture is. How important culture is. Culture is so powerful and so important that the Quran and other religious books relate to culture in symbolic terms, like women. A woman is considered a culture. Women are considered a culture. Mothers are considered a culture. Whenever you see the female term, it's taking on that concept and idea of a culture, because a culture molds and shapes the identification of people. So the woman, even though the woman may not be of age to bear children, but she's going to be that she's physically capable, or she's physically able to move in a direction to help shape that environment that she's in. So they are looked on as culture. In fact, in the Quran, they use the term Ummi. Ummi, they use that for term for culture. They say Ibrahim was a Ummah in the Quran, meaning that Ibrahim was a culture. Imam Muhammad explained that so beautifully that many of the prophets and messages that we read about in the Quran may not have been an individual. It may have been the community, or may have been an idea, a concept, a philosophy that evolved. So when we look at terms like Ibrahim was a Ummah, and that means we have to look at what that means, what Ibrahim means, to understand this idea of culture. Ibrahim was the one who Allah said to Prophet Muhammad, follow the millah of Ibrahim. Why is that so important? That's important because Ibrahim was the one who used his rational mind. He used his logic. He used his rational mind to follow and understand what brings his conscious mind to God, to the creator. And what he found was that there's nothing in the creation that his conscious mind, his rational mind, could comprehend that is greater than that which created it. So he came to the conclusion that he would only believe in that which created everything for the first time. That's where the concept of belief comes from. The concept of belief comes from using the logic. It comes from the not having the proof of the existence of something, but yet you believe it. You believe it as almost you believe in yourself. You believe in the existence of something you can't touch. You can't talk with, other than the spiritual connection you make within your own mind, that this is a spirituality that takes place but the creator and his creation. And this connection of following the logic, following the rational development of the human being, and that the human being is a spiritual creation in the physical world. Allah created he says in Quran, he created the Khalifa. He created a spirit that would live in the physical world and control the physical world with his power that Allah had given him. And he, getting back to what Imam Muhammad says, when you look at man means mind, that is talking about Allah created the mind in the physical world. And it's the mind that controls the physical world. The physical world doesn't have control over the mind, although we see hurricanes, we see floods, we see earth cracking, and all those things happen. But the mind all the time is figuring out a way how to dominate and control the wind, control the water, control the rain, control the lightning. He's figuring out every kind of way how to control the energy that comes from the sun, control the energy in the earth, because the mind is that powerful that Allah created it. This is why when we look at some of the symbolic terms, the malaika, when the angels, when the creator told them about this creature, man, they couldn't understand how you would create something with that kind of power and give it the freedom of growth. And as you know, the first thing, in order to accept Allah, the first thing you have to be able to do is say la. No is the first conscious move that the mind is making. No, I don't have to. That kind of power is necessary in order for progress to be made, in order for this physical creation to be changed and developed by the mind. Because if it didn't have that power, then it would be stuck in the same position the birds are stuck in, the same position that the gorillas are stuck in, the same position that the lions and the bears and all of the other creatures are stuck in an environment that they cannot get out of. And they can't get out of this environment because they accept their position. They accept what they are and how they're created. They accept the life in which they found themselves, and they live that life generation after generation. But that's not so with the human being. That's not so with this mind that Almighty Allah created in the physical world. The human being believed that it could fly. It looked at the bird and said, I can do that. It didn't just stay on the ground and take his position and take his lesson of what we can and cannot do. No. The human being continued to believe that it can fly. It could turn water into electricity. It can turn all of these things. It has done this particular or these particular aspects and developments in a relatively short period of time. Do you know that the creation of AI is we hear 3,000-4,000 years, 6,000 years. And this creation we're in is billions of years old. And the human being is so new. But yet, because of the mind, the human being is able to change the creation and takes the creation into a new form. Allah has created the human being to think in what we call the imagination, to use the mind to create an image that doesn't really exist in reality, but it looks so real in the mind that the mind convinces itself that it exists and can exist. If it doesn't exist, the mind goes to work to try to create it. That's the power of imagination that's in the mind. This is why some of the great thinkers talked about the mind, and why Imam Muhammad pushed us to see that man means mind. You know, ancient Egypt were great scientists. Ancient Egypt was great philosophers and did a wonderful work in developing the human being in our industrious nature. But they didn't have this concept of the mind that we have today. They didn't have this concept. They thought that the energy that was driving the human being was the heart. And you can see it even in those who, in the religious texts, it talks about the heart as being the center. The physical heart, the one that's in the chest. They thought that was the driving force of the human being. And the reason they thought that was because of the impact the heart would have on any living person. If you feel fear, the heart is beating fast. And the reverse it, if you feel love, the heart beat fast. The heart was in every kind of emotional aspect of the human being. And the reason that exists is so that the adrenaline that causes the human being to get energy in different parts of the body quickly, it is the heart that has to pump it there. So Allah created the heart to respond to situations that would come up, that it needed the adrenaline to move all in the human body so the human being can move itself out of the way of danger or into something that's not harmful. Even as we think emotionally, it's still that adrenaline and that thinking that comes for the physical body, but the emotions come directly from the brain. The brain contains the emotions. The brain contains the logic. The brain contains it, and the way the brain contains it is in the form of and use it to create the mind. The brain itself is the physical world, and the mind is formed from the brain in the darkness. As it gets the five senses, the six senses, and there's more than that, because we had the sense of taste, we had the sense of also the sense of balance. We had the sense of timing. You know yourself how you can get into a particular time and get in conjunction with the whole motion of the creation, the sun, the moon, the stars, and we go accordingly because of that sense that's in us, in the human being. So the human being's physical body has all of these sensations to aid them of the mind. And learns how to create the world that it can imagine, that comes in its imagination. So it's a wonderful thing, this creation. And those people who came into this knowledge of the creation, in more of this modern day time, they recognized that there was a way to control the masses of the people, or enough of the people to cause them to be in charge of their mind. They knew how to manipulate man through emotions. They knew how to manipulate man through sex. They used all of these things to manipulate man so that man will serve them. And those aspects of the human being that gets into that kind of thinking, of controlling the minds and development of a human being, it even looks like, well, in early times, in our development, Master Farad Muhammad pointed out that that's what the devil is. Only he said that the European is the devil. The white man, he used the term white. So we know that's not really a human being. There's no such thing as a white man. But he was talking about the conditions that were brought about to rule over other people. The devil. That's the most evil aspect about the development of the human being, that the human being has a weakness. And that weakness is that we can be shaped and molded, which is actually a strength, but it's also a weakness. Because of that being able to be shaped and manipulated also is necessary for our growth and development. And if we allow ourselves to succumb to the weaknesses that are within us and don't turn those weaknesses into strengths, then we will become those weaknesses. Then the term devil will be applicable to those people who manipulate the masses, manipulate people for their own growth and development in terms of power and control. But once man recognizes the importance of developing the taqwa, then man can work his way away from that kind of creature that we can become. He can work his way away from the creature that controls other people through murder, death, and lying. He can work away from that. Because when Prophet Muhammad was asked this question, and the question is talking about the jinn nature. He was talking about the jinn nature and how the jinn nature is the part that says lab because it's necessary for progress, but it also is used to come against that taqwa that's in the human being to lean toward the inclination for good. So what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said to those who was listening attentively, and they asked a question before he said, they asked him a question. They said, what is this? And he told them the jinn. And they asked him, do you have a jinn? And Prophet Muhammad says, yes. And then they wanted to know, did you have a jinn? That was in the essence of that question. And he said, but he made his jinn Muslim, or his jinn became Muslim. It depends upon the interpreter. But we do know for a fact, if those who believe in Quran and follow the logic of the Quran, we do know for a fact that in the creation of man, the Khalifa, that Allah said to all the creatures, all the malaika, and that includes the jinn, the nature, all the natures, all the emotional nature, to make sujud to his creation, his man, his Khalifa. To make sujud mean bow down or surrender is even a better understanding. Surrender that which I have created in you. You surrender that to my Khalifa. When he comes to you for it, give it to him. They're commanded. So the jinn is commanded to obey the Khalifa. The malaika is commanded to obey the Khalifa. The earth, the physical earth, is commanded to obey the Khalifa, because the physical earth is moved by all the malaika or the jinn or the forces that's in the physical earth. And they were all commanded by Allah to make sujud to his man. So that gives the human being control over what? Control over his emotional capacity. Control over his rational capacity. Control over his mind, his conscious mind, the mind that comes alive to everything that's in the universe. It comes alive to those things and realizes them and study them. That conscious mind makes a decision on his impact he's going to have on the world, on the physical world, on himself. That conscious mind. the controlling aspect of the human being. All of that is so very important, especially when we start talking about this concept of culture. If on any of those levels, the culture ceases to exist or ceases to teach those in the culture, those vital aspects of the human being, then that culture, as we said before, can be misdirected and then can become extinct. In this day and time, Allah not only is God in the world, he created a new culture in the very existence that we are in today. He created a new culture, a new people, to be able to look at all that came before them and give a concept, an idea about what we see and what we understand that will eclipse the false reality, that would eclipse the false reality, and we can build a new reality, another reality. Many of us say, Imam Muhammad said, remake the world. Well, that's what that's talking about. The world is the reality that you're in. And that reality is a false reality. And in order to make it new, you have to make another reality. We have to be able to use our conscious mind. We have to be able to follow the thinking along trusting, following the logic to its logical conclusion. And we have to trust that in each of us. We are living in a time now where we don't have any more great men who coming up who's going to lead the masses, especially not in religion. That may happen in politics. It may happen in history. It may happen in education. It may happen in many the other aspects in business. It may happen there. Someone would come up smarter and help the other people to go in a direction. But in the way of life, between Allah and his creation, what we call a way of life, that's what religion of old is a concept that was established to control the masses. But what Allah is talking about in getting us to see the importance, he is talking about the relationship of the individual with him, the creator. There's no in between there. There's no go between there anymore. It used to be messengers and prophets and all of those things. That's no more. Now, the human being has to go on his own as an individual with his conscious mind to live the life in which his taqwa, his inclination to do good, is calling on. And that kind of thinking is perpetuated by a culture that understands that. And a culture that understands that and teaches it to the young people that's coming up in that culture, and then they can grow in that kind of understanding of serving God as a human being. Serving God on their own. Then they would learn to use these great aspects that we find in the Quran, which is ashura bainahum, the concept of working together, or more than working together, it's collaborating. It's collaboration of people, different people with different ideas and different concepts, being able to work through those differences and bring out a better situation, a more progressive situation for humanity. That's the era we are in. That's the era that's now. That's the era that has birthed itself with the power of God through the concepts and ideas of other leaders, but especially Imam Wardi Muhammad. And this is what we are about today. What we are here to talk about in terms of what is happening on the 21st of June. We're given a fashion show.
Before, Imam, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, before you go into that, thank you for what you laid out so far, giving us a thorough presentation and a frame of thinking in relation to the human being, the capacity of the human mind to follow the logic to its logical conclusion. You also talked about the two stages or two levels of development, the biological and the cultural. And then you emphasize the importance of thinking and this consciousness, taqwa, this regardfulness of every one of us have this capacity to obey our Creator. So before you go into your event that's coming up on Sunday in Roselle, and I do have the flyer, I would like you just for a moment, since you almost quadrupled down on the importance of the mind and freedom and the expression of freedom, free mind, if you would go into the Juneteenth, just give us some of your insights on that, and then we'll close out the hour, or we passed the hour. We'll close out with the announcement of the event. But if you could just address Juneteenth, because you very accurately and logically shared all of our minds as human beings, but in particular, you were addressing our people into a new people, a new culture. So if you can just address the Juneteenth, inshallah.
Absolutely.
That is so very important that we see the Juneteenth. And remember what we talked about earlier in terms of the culture, how a culture has to have its own thinking so it can shape its own way through this reality. The Juneteenth, the truth of Juneteenth is what we must establish first. We can no longer let anyone try to establish our lives for us. We have to do it for ourselves. Juneteenth. The first thing we should ask, what language is that word? What language is the word Juneteenth? Then we can get a real good understanding of the meaning of what's behind the meaning. A person would say, well, that's the way African slaves talked. They couldn't say June 19th. And we had people like Frederick Douglass and all these other great African Americans, but yet they tell us that story because they know we will buy into that easier, that the Africans couldn't say June 19th. So in order to celebrate that particular time, they said Juneteenth. When we trace the history of the African Americans, before we became African Americans, and that happened in the Revolutionary War, before that time, we were developing the culture. And in that culture we was developing in Texas and other places, it wasn't just taking place in one area, it was taking place in different areas, but in some areas it lasted. In other areas it waited out. It became obsolete. But in some areas it lasted. And one of those areas was in South Carolina and Georgia, down in the Sea Islands, where many of the African Americans lived, and they had the opportunity that other slaves in America did not have. They had the opportunity to grow their culture without interference from the European slave master. And the way that happened, and when you look at the evolution of this whole thing, you see the power of Allah working. The way that happened down in the Sea Islands, every year, that's the big rice farms, every year, there was mosquitoes come out, and those mosquitoes carry malaria. And malaria kills the human being. The human being can't live with malaria. And it come out in June, and it lasts all the way to October, 6 months each year. And what happened to the European slave drivers and slave masters, they had to move further north, out of the area where those mosquitoes would carry this malaria. Some call it yellow fever. But the Africans who were in that part of the world doing their work or already in a situation what we call immune. They was immune to malaria. And they was immune to malaria because they come out of a people who had been created in Africa, where the malaria is still very strong, but there's some medicine now, but it's still very strong. But man had to evolve out of that area. That's all human beings come out of Africa. So the malaria was there. And in order for the malaria not to kill Allah's creation, he created within that creation what they call a sickle cell. The sickle cell was created in the human being, in the body of the human being, in the bloodstream. And what that sickle cell does is take the malaria germ out through the spleen of the body so a person just might have a cold or something. And it was those Africans who they brought from Africa to slave in America had that same immunity from malaria. So every year, down in the Sea Islands in Georgia and South Carolina, where the European had to move out and go further because he didn't have that immunity. He wasn't immune to malaria. They would die instantly. Every year, for 6 months, each year, the Africans in that area had an opportunity to develop themselves. They developed their culture, used all they could remember from the homeland to put it together. They used the 15 to 20% was Muslim, so they could speak Arabic. They used part of the Arabic language. They used the language of the Northern English people and the Scottish who spoke in those areas where they were. They used that language and mixed it with Arabic and some of their own languages they could remember, the words they could remember from their own African dialects. And they created this language they call Geechee, a powerful language that if you hear somebody speaking Geechee, you think they trying to speak English, but you can't understand what they're saying, but they can understand what they're saying easily. So they had created a method by which they can manipulate the European simply by talking around them in a language that sounds like their language. And so the European would just be thinking that the African was too ignorant to learn English, when actually they created a whole new language. And in that language is where we find words like these terms, Juneteenth. Now, we may not say that's an absolute situation because the Sea Islands was a long way from Texas and so forth and so on, but the slaves were being transported all over. But we have evidence that the Geechee language was being used by the slaves to travel all over America, wherever they was going, wherever they were taken. They built their first African village called Fort Moose down in St. Augustine, Florida, when it was still owned by the Spanish. And this language evolved, and this language was the foundation. If the African Americans could have kept this language running throughout our whole lifestyle, life in America, we would have been a much stronger people, because it is language that binds a culture, that keeps the culture together. This is why you see people who come to America, they don't give up their language. You talk to some of the people that speak in English and so forth, they've been here 12 years, 15 years, they keep their language. And they go, there's some people, they say, if you go into some parts of New York and walk around several blocks, you wouldn't see any Jewish people, Hasidic Jews. They don't even speak English in those areas. There's some towns, you go to Chinatown, they speak Chinese and different dialects of Chinese, because that's the foundation of culture. Without it, you're lost, because then you have to deal with the language of the conqueror, the oppressor. then the oppressor gives you a language that keeps us enslaved to that oppressor. And you don't have a way out. There's no way out of that. If you're being taught a language that keeps you enslaved, then your mind gonna become that slave. Although the bracelets or the handcuffs fall off your arms, but it doesn't fall off your mind. And without a language, it's impossible to overcome that. That's why Allah blessed us to be able to create a language. And there's many of you and me and all of us who think we don't use that language today. We use it. I hear people saying, "You fitting to get in trouble, boy. You fitting to do something. You fitting to do something you ain't supposed to do." That word fitna comes from the language that was created in the South, in the Geechee language. It comes from the Quran, because some of them were Muslims. And if you study your Quran, you'll see the word fitna in there means trouble. Fitna, just like that, it means trouble. Something that causes trouble, harm, or anything that comes directly from the Quran. And that's part of the language African Americans speaking in New York City and other places. But they don't want to identify with the language, the Geechee language, because the European told them that was a ignorant Africans who could not speak English. That's why they speak that language. So you get Africans who could speak Geechee, like one of the judges, the supreme judges right now can speak Geechee. He wrote in his book about it. But they don't do it often because they still think of it as negative. But we are coming around. Some now into research and understand how important language and have a positive identification of language is. So when we're looking at Juneteenth, we get a better understanding of what that is about. What is that about African freedom, or is that about an opportunity for the European people to make us think they freed us? They never freed us. The Emancipation Proclamation wasn't about freeing the African. It was about abolishing slavery. There were many Africans in America that weren't slaves. They owned plantations, in fact. We won our freedom along with the European American, the colonists at the time. We won our freedom from Great Britain. Great Britain controlled the colonies. And they had not just slaves, but they had Europeans who was under control. And so the Europeans thought they could get as much out of this land as Great Britain was getting out of this land, as the English. So they decided to come together, and they combined themselves. They united with themselves and united with Africans. They united with the Native Americans who was here to fight for a cause that was developed by Jefferson. Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. That's the foundation of our freedom. The Declaration of Independence is the only document that we should recognize as that which freed the African people in America. And when it said, all men are created equal with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it was talking about you, me, our forefathers. It wasn't just talking about the European. We was in on that. But they don't want us to think that, because then we will really think we're equal. Reason African Americans don't think they're equal, because we don't think we're free. We think we're still enslaved by these amendments. We think we're still enslaved by these little concepts and laws that they bring up every now and then to diminish the positive identification we have with ourselves. So they treat Juneteenth like that. They treat Juneteenth as if they're doing us a favor. They're not doing us a favor. Juneteenth was a mission of the European American of doing dastardly deeds against people. And we should look at it as what it is. The idea of the Emancipation Proclamation, cutting out slavery, was a simple concept that Lincoln and a couple other people came up with to stop the South from succeeding from the Union. They wasn't caring about the slave population. They was concerned with the southern states separating from the Union. That would break the country in half. They would lose the impact they was gaining over when they became a country from England. They became very strong in the world. And now with the South wanting to break away from the North because they felt as though the North was not giving them the proper cut, the proper precision, the proper development, and the proper amount of money from their efforts. And that came because the Southern was producing raw materials. They were producing cotton, all the raw materials from vegetables. They produced these things and they sent them off into Europe where they could be refined. And Europe would charge them a tariff to bring those raw materials into the country. And then after the Europeans would make it into products, they would send it back to America. But they would dock them in North part of America. And as they docked them in the North part of America, then the shipping industry in that part then charged England a tariff. And they got the profit. So the northern shipping people and those who controlled the products coming into the country were making the biggest profit. And the South was angry about that. The southern states said, no, it's our raw materials that are going there and you're getting the profit, double profit when they come back into the country. We don't like it. We think we can do this ourselves. We want to build our own country. That's what the fight was about. It wasn't about the slaves. We have to get away from that false thinking. Look at the reality. This is in history books, but they don't read them to us unless we get it for ourselves. I've seen them. I read them. I know they're there. I researched them, and others have. That the war between the North and the South wasn't not about slaves. In fact, in Lincoln's address, he said, if we can keep the Union and give up the slaves, he would give up the slaves. If we can keep some of the slaves and give up and free some of them and keep the Union, we'll do that. And if we had to free all the slaves to keep the Union, we'll do that. Whatever it takes to keep the Union, we would do. They were looking at the Union. That's what the history holds. But they tell us these stories, these yarns, because they understand that we have been conditioned by a false reality, so they can tell us false information. And we use it up. We should celebrate, but not the way they want us to celebrate. We should celebrate the magnificent growth of the African American people under harsh conditions, that our people have become scientists and engineers, and we encourage those of us who still exist to encourage the young people to do that. Do what their foreparents have done. And they should study the footprints of their foreparents so they can see this is a mighty people here in America called the African Bilalian American. So Juneteenth is a great day. But we need to understand why we celebrate it. And that word comes from our foundation, not from the European. It's our foundation. Whether they can find a language or anything of that nature is our foundation. But it's most likely come out of the Geechee language. A lot of our words do. I even saw the brother in California who was teaching Ebonics. And they were trying to say Ebonics was the first language of African people, African American people, which didn't make any sense at all. Because that's modern times. Geechee was back before 1690s when they started that. And they all come from the South. The people in California didn't come suddenly drop out the sky. No, they came up from the end, from Chicago to New York, came out of the South, and the South, including Texas area. That's what moved them out into those areas. And they went out there with a language. These young people who were speaking on the streets, they only speak in the language they hear their fathers and mothers speak. I remember growing up, that's what we did. We should listen to our fathers and mothers say things, and we said them too, and then and corrupted it into our daily life. made it something. Hey, man, what's happening? Those kinds of things. No, we have to look at Juneteenth, but let's look at it with a critical eye. Let's look at it an eye that talks about progress. Let's look at an eye that talks about progress and the development of the African-American people, more than singing and dancing. They just want us to sing and dance because they can entertain us. They want us to stay entertained so they can entertain us and bring the work and bring us back to work for them to build their empire. Entertain us and bring us to work the next day so they can build their empire. Entertain us, bring us to the work so they can build their empire. That's the psychology they use on us. We should look at Juneteenth as a day on which we all put emphasis on the progressive thinking of the African American people. Even if you have the different religions, different philosophies, is that one day we should try to collaborate with one another in groups to bring about progress amongst our people. Yes, Juneteenth is important, but let's give it its great importance and why it's so important. When we do that, then we'll get much more from Juneteenth. And let's stop saying that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. He didn't free the slaves. Slaves was a population that was housed as a workforce by slave masters. But the African people won their freedom when we fought against Great Britain with other Europeans and other Native Americans to break away from that tyrant, the empire of Great Britain. That was the first sign that the empire of the British Empire was coming apart, was coming down, when the American colonies broke away and became a free nation, the United States of America. And we are part of that. Our parents died in that war. They died trying to establish that freedom. They have monuments built about African American people, the Buffalo people. They have in England, in New England, they had African Americans who fought and developed the colonies to preserve this nation. The European American is guilty of hiding the truth as they teach a history that's twisted and doesn't hold under truth. This is why they don't want to teach history anymore in these European schools. They're trying to eliminate teaching the entire history, teaching a reality that's correct. They don't want to teach the correct reality. They want to continue to teach a false reality because they don't want the African American people to grow at the rate of progress that we see and have seen our people do. Even in chains, we were inventing concepts and ideas. We are the ones who helped make this whole society so-called lit up. It wasn't Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison was a couple of them, not just Thomas Edison, several Europeans was trying to make the light bulb in order they can use it in the houses, in residential areas. They couldn't do it. Couldn't get it to burn for an hour or so until an African American came along named Carter G. Woodson. Louis Latimer. Carter G. Woodson was the one who started the African American Cultural Month. Louis Latimer was the one who developed and got a patent for the carbon filament in order to make the light bulb burn. This is in the history books, but they don't teach it. They'll talk about Thomas Edison and never even mention Lewis Latimer. But fortunately, I happen to be from Roselle, New Jersey, is the first town that ever was lit up by that light bulb in the residential towns in the world. The first one in the world. So they didn't know, and I went all through high school in Roselle. I never heard the name of Lewis Latimer in relationship to anything really, but definitely not in relationship to the light bulb. But yet Thomas Edison, we got schools learning after Edison, we got towns learning after Edison, all of those things, as if he invented the way to burn the light bulb. The light bulb was not new. The idea wasn't new, but keeping it burning was what made it work. And so Lewis Latimer is the one who fathered the books on light and how and all of Europe and England. He was invited to England to stay there, to teach them, and China and all these places that was learning the concept of the fluorescent light. It was because of the work of Carnegie, of Lewis Latimer. Maybe we need to talk about Carnegie Worcester sometime too, but Lewis Latimer. So it's a reality on how should we look at Juneteenth and how we should start celebrating the concepts of progress. Everything should be about progress during that time. We should stretch it because it also falls in Father's Day. That's the reason we are looking at this Father's Day program. Sometimes they're on the same day. They're on the 19th. The Sunday, sometimes the Sunday is the 19th, and Juneteenth and Father's Day are the same day. But we have to treat it different. We can't do it like the European American want us to do it. Yes, brother.
Yes, so alhamdulillah, I appreciate that, giving us, again, more insight into how seeing the importance of how language shapes our reality, shapes our thinking, allows us to get through these challenges even till today. And I really appreciate you, again, I'm saying quadruple, going down even deeper to connect the light, the invention of light and how it was used to light up the city. And you also talked about the importance of seeing our progression of African Americans, not just from the Emancipation Proclamation, but going back to the Declaration of Independence. So we really appreciate that. So as we close out, we'd like you to now address, I'm going to pull up the flyer here of the event, as you just alluded to, that's going on during Father's Day. Where is it at? Here it goes. Can you see it?
Yes,
Yes,
I have it, yes.
Okay. So share with us where people could join and get this information.
Yes. And okay, this is
Information is about a fashion show because it's about culture, because another identification of a culture is the way they dress. Almost every culture on the planet Earth, they have a particular way they dress. And the African American have not been given that opportunity. We're not taking it fully enough to take it to the next level. But this is what this show is about. It's the Mayor Shaw and the county, the Council of Roselle presents a Father's Day fashion expression is show here, but on Sunday, June 21st, from 3 to 6. And it's featuring the Bilalian style for men. Now that's a design that Allah has blessed me to be able to design over these many years, focusing on the culture of the African American. Much of what we talked about tonight, that's in these clothes. It has a trademark center pocket, and that trademark center pocket represents life. If you look at all the mammals in the world, all of those who have pockets, those pockets represent the life of their species. So the pocket that is a trademark pocket is ours. It's ours. No one can have it but us. And it shows this connection that the Africans came to America And in America is where this culture was formed. So this culture from the African American to the Bilalian to the African Bilalian American, and this style, we've been blessed to come up with this. And as we do more at the program, we're going to learn more at the program how it really came into existence. In fact, I'll be giving a talk on it for about 15, 20 minutes, so you can really get a strong connection on why this look is important to African American people. It gives us an identity different than any other person on the planet, and it gives us an identity we can be proud of that comes from our own loins. And that's a major step in the progress toward freeing the mind, because the mind can't be free if it thinks it belongs to someone else or something else. The mind has to be free. From the way we get up in the morning, put on our clothes, today we get up in the morning, we put on clothes, we putting on the clothes of another culture, a culture that we didn't create, a style that comes from Europe or even Africa, different looks, wasn't from us. That's what the Bilalian suits and shirts gives us. It gives us an identity to identify our development in the world, America, and how we came into existence. And the address of the event is going to be at the Anthony Amafi Center, and that's 1268 Schaefer Avenue, Roselle, New Jersey. And if you call, for information, you can call 908-296-3036. Or you can call me directly at 908-296-2558. And it's a free event, and we have food, free food and everything. It'll be really, really great. There's going to be a lot of energy packed in this program on Sunday. And so we encourage the ladies to escort your husbands, your man, your sons. Come on out to this wonderful event. The doors open at 2:30, and it goes from 3 to 6. And as I said, it's a free event. We'll be looking forward to seeing you there. You're not going to regret a moment of it. It's going to be very exciting, full of energy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate that. Thank you for joining on this special edition of Community Conversations, Freedom School edition. Again, we're having a series throughout the summer, bringing on different guests, amplifying the importance of our civil liberties. Today, we were joined by Imam Shaheed Abdullah, the African Bilalian American Griot, who gave us a wealth of knowledge and information. If you like to look back at the replay, again, you can go on our Facebook, Masjid Muhammad Noor, as well as our YouTube, Masjid Muhammad Noor. We also will simulcasting at New Freedom Exchange, as well as New Freedom Network, as well as the Muslim Journal. Before I give our Imam some closing remarks, I did want to share some announcements from the masjid. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to do that, and then we'll have Imam close us out with his closing remarks. So at our masjid, we have a mortgage principal campaign drive. We ask our members and our supporters who be willing to designate a certain amount of money every week towards us eliminating our mortgage principle that we have on the masjid. So you can see all these announcements you'll be able to see on masjidmuhammadnoor.org. Also, we have this Saturday, Designing Masjid Muhammad's Future Market workshop. So we ask you to come and join us at 10 a.m. Live at the masjid, and I'll put the link also in the chat. We also have after Jummah this Friday. We had it last Friday, also be this Friday, senior tech class. So our seniors, we welcome to come join us after the Jummah Salat. It's a free entry. Bring your devices, live demos, device setup, and one-on-one help. That was today's event, Community Conversation. I think there was one more other one on here I wanted to share with you all. Two were actually. We have our Learn About Al-Islam classes on Sundays from 10:30 to 11:30. We also have our financial literacy, halal money classes every Saturday from 1:30 to 3. So you could join us live in Masjid Muhammad North. Again, that's 253, 255 South Orange Avenue. We also have our Sunday school, Claire Muhammad Weekend School. We're still taking students ages 6 to 17 every Sunday from 11 to 1, where we go over Islamic and Quranic principles as well as good character. So we welcome you to join us. We're also looking for volunteers to assist us in the upkeep and the maintenance of our masjid and our surrounding area. We are looking for people to join us there. We are a distributor of True Laundry Detergent. You can get it live at our masjid, or you can reach out to our distributor, Adib Shaker, at 973-420-4172. And inshallah, we'll be able to supply you. Also, we have here one of our community organizations from one of our members. They're also looking for volunteers at Good Deeds. And we have some other community partners as well. So again, you can get this information on www.masjidmuhammadnorth.org. And I'll put in the chat again the link as well as some of the things that I announced. So as we come to an end, I would like to allow our dear Imam to, if you can address on business, the importance of business too. You talked heavy about culture, and we know culture is encompassing of everything in the life of the human being. But if you give us your closing remark and a little amplification of business, you're a businessman. I see you can also please talk about your books, your publications. Success is Automatic, and you have a few other books there. So please share that with us before you leave. And if you have any, I know you gave us your number, but if you have any other contact you'd like to share, we welcome that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Yes, my years of research have given me the opportunity to gain a lot of knowledge and information that I was able to put into tablets, into books. And I'm so grateful for that because it's about, as you say, business. And we say business, but we also mean other words like commerce and economics and the economy. Those are words which are all tied together. And what I've found in researching for my books, especially in Success is Automatic, that is very necessary for us to see this as a natural evolution as part of our life. And as we evolve, these are what makes the human being a human being is that we can become independent. And the only way we can become independent, which means that the physical world doesn't have as much of a hold on us as it does the other animals of this physical environment. And the way we can do that is become productive. And the way we become productive is through commerce and business and doing business with one another. And you provide one thing, another person provides another thing. And these kinds of things causes this, what we call a commerce. It's called commerce, it's called economy. All of that is very important. And if you notice what's going on in the world today, is all about the economy. It's not as much about land as it is about the economy, because the land is pretty much the way it is. And you see that get countries trying to get more land now so they can build a bigger economy. So we have to look at business as a way of life, not as something that we get up in the work and go to work for someone else. No, we have to start looking at business and economic development as part of the gift that Allah has blessed us with. And we should serve it as if we are getting up and eating breakfast in the morning or having a dinner at night. We should think of business and economics and the process of growth and development in that light, because without it, the other very important avenues have a hard time growing. Education can't go far without the economic development of a society, nor can the politics. Politics can't go anywhere without the economic development of a society, nor can religion or faith or culture. The growth of a society is dependent upon how astute the people of that society look at business and the economy and how they use it and love it as if they love their own selves, because their own selves depend on this economic growth as to why Allah has created us in this environment to grow it, to develop it. And we are that creature that causes the physical world to grow. We cause the physical world to change shape, and all of that is supported by business. So yes, business is very important. And those of us who are inclined to it, incline more. Don't shy away from it. Let it become natural growth. Let it become natural to think of the proper way of handling finances. Let it become natural growth, the proper way of giving. And this is another part of business. A lot of people don't realize it, but it's charity. It's really a function of business. It's a function of business to keep the society growing. That if you are in business and make a certain amount of money, then you can give to someone else, and that gives them the same opportunity. And that means the whole culture grows, not just one individual, not just one person, but the whole society. So the principles of Islam is business. I remember Imam Muhammad wrote a book about business and Islam. So it's very important for us to see this idea of business and its relationship to our everyday lives. It's not separate from us. It is us in terms of our growth and development. Is it the physical growth and the physical development should be anchored in commerce, in business. And that sort of led me to other aspects in my search into looking at the African American people and our growth. And that one of my books called The River of Gold, which talks about how the African Americans grew in America after that time that we spoke of earlier, in terms of building of Black Wall Street and other Black metropolis in Chicago and all these different places where the African Americans grew in development. It's a novel, but it's based on the historical reality of the African people. Then, of course, there's the book Spirit of Bilal, which is A Community is Born, Calling the World to Human Excellence. That's encouraging people to look at our taqwa, as the taqwa was developed in the human being on a large scale, that a community could be born who had that sense of taqwa to do the right thing, to drive the other thinkers in the world to strive toward human excellence. And that was another book. And we thank so much Allah for allowing us to be able to be part of such growth. And of course, my last book I wrote is Uncovering the Scheme, Preventing the Evolution of the African American People. That's a fascinating journey of all of the schemes and ideas, maybe not all of them, but enough of them that can really open your mind to see what's going on in the world and how the dominating culture suppressed the minds of a recessive culture, whether it be here in America or anywhere. And it shows how you can manipulate or how you can break away from the dominating scheme and move into a free mind, free thinking. So those are the basic books. And I also have this book called The Negro Market. I was blessed to get that book. I didn't write that book. That book was written in 1934. It started in 32, but it's about the development of the African American people over those years, how we had advanced so far that we was more important and had grown bigger than the province of Canada, according to this book called The Negro Market. We handle it. All the other books could be gotten on Amazon. You go to Amazon and get them. But that book, we the only ones that help sell that book, The Negro Market. That's sold on my website called Building New Africa. That's buildingnewafricausa.com. buildingnewafricausa.com. You can go there and get all the books, and in fact, you'll be able to get the clothes also at that same address. and you can call me directly if you wish at 908-296-2558. That's 908-296-2558. And we will be probably changing that number soon, but you still be able to reach me directly. So with that, I want to thank Brother Imam Mujahideen and his family and friends and all of you for giving me the opportunity to just talk about some of the things that Allah has blessed me to be able to do and be inspired by people around me and other people who I've had the company coming in contact with. It's been a wonderful voyage and a journey. And I think that what we see in front of us is a building of a new reality. It's birthing a new reality, birthing the future. It's a beautiful thing that's in front of us if we just grab hold to some of these things that are present now that we build from before. They will take us into the future. So with that, I want to thank again all of you, and I will greet you in the greetings of peace of Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. And again, our listening audience, viewership, we'll see you all on the next edition of National Muhammad Freedom School Community Conversations edition with Civil Liberties series. Again, we thank you all for joining. Please share, subscribe, and until next time, peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Now, in concluding this, when the slave traders and the black traders of Africa, traitors, different, traitors, when the slave traders and the traitors of Africa called themselves Muslims, were fighting each other and carrying on and weakening their people over there so that the white traders come in there and get us, take us on slave ships and bring us here. Now, all right? Yeah. So now, when all that happened, what you think was happening to our human soul? Let me tell you, God has given me an eye to see into the very abstract form of the human being by my study of the Quran. Yes. Now, I'm going to tell you what was happening. I know, as if I was there. The soul of those victims had given up on this world. They knew they were going to their death. They knew they were going to circumstances that were going to finish them off. They would never have their lives again. They knew that. But in their soul, they were saying, our children will one day be free again, and they will serve God. We have failed, but our children will one day serve God. And now their prayer that they prayed in the deep recesses of their soul has come true. And not only of the descendants of the black people of Africa, from Islam, coming to Islam, taking up the divine cause, but those who never were Muslims, their children from Christianity, their children from Judaism, their children from paganism are embracing Islam in America. And we are going to build new Africa. New Africa, right here in the United States. Allahu Akbar. And the soul of those suffering victims, they're rejoicing because of us here today.